Hi there, everyone. Welcome to Mindstorm. My name is Adeo Ressi. I'm CEO of the Founder Institute and a 25-year veteran entrepreneur. I'm joined here by my good friend Josh.
Hey everybody, I'm Josh Whiton, an impact entrepreneur, currently founder of MakeSoil.org and other planetary interventions.
So we like to cover awakened entrepreneurship and purpose-based entrepreneurship and everything in between. And an interesting concept that comes up for me a lot, and we were talking about how this comes up, but is manifestation. And it's a strange idea where your mind can envision something, and then that thing that your mind envisions just comes into reality in the world itself. But it's not without action or intention.
Yep.
And so we're going to go into what is manifestation, how do you do it, how does it work, how can it impact you, and how do you integrate it in your practical life. But maybe let's just start, I sort of gave my description. How would you describe manifestation?
Well, what's telling is that it's not like you and I went to a manifestation seminar or something. We've both just been independent entrepreneurs, guys, quite rational guys who know how to code, living our lives, and yet somehow we've both ended up believing that there's more at work and more possible through the mind and a certain conversation with reality than is ordinarily talked about.
Right. So a lot of entrepreneurs, a lot of practical people like you and I once were, and I guess we still are, would say, hey, if you want to get from A to B, you got to put your boots on and walk between A and B. And what manifestation is really saying is that more than putting your boots on and walking between A and B, you can sort of visualize what B is, and it might come to you in a much easier way than just, walking through walls, climbing over mountains, and everything else that you might traditionally think of as an entrepreneur or someone who wants to get something done.
Yep. And additionally, my perspective on it and experience of it is that if you have a really good intention going from A to B, something even better than B might happen halfway along. Or you might get to C instead, and it's even better than B. So there's also, in my experience, a larger force of some kind that may even have better plans for my own life and actions than my own mind can come up with. So what you're saying and more.
Yeah, so what I would add to that is that manifestation isn't like, okay, I want to manifest $1 billion pile of cash in front of me, and then you just sit on your butt and $1 billion pile of cash appears. Right? It's more like maybe you say, I want to have resources to do X, and you visualize what that looks like, and you visualize yourself with those resources. And then not only do you have to do some effort, right? You have to take some initiative, but you also have to be open and create the space for these things to happen. Because one of the things I see a lot of times is that, and this actually happened with a very famous entrepreneur that I know just yesterday, actually right before we did another podcast episode. I was on the phone with her and we were talking, and she's like, oh man, this and this and this is going on. And actually, I'd only spoken to her maybe 3 months ago. And 3 months ago, she said to me, Adeo, it would be so lovely if this happened, if that happened, and if this other thing happened. And 3 months later, I'm talking to her. All those things happened. Literally every one of the things that she was manifesting 3 months ago had happened. Yet she was sort of complaining about the next set of things that she wanted to have happen. And she couldn't even appreciate the fact that she had manifested exactly what she wanted. And so for me, it's not just about visualizing it, but to your point, it's also about creating the space for it to happen.
And possibly even the gratitude afterwards seems to encourage it, right?
Right. And then being able to be present enough to say, whoa, I wanted this, I wanted that, and now I have it. Yeah. And a lot of times people forget. So maybe we can jump into how do you do it, right? Because that might get very practical. And I'll tell you how I do it, because I have a very specific methodology here, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on it. So I kind of, I would do it like a classic entrepreneur you would imagine doing it. So the first thing that I do is I sort of visualize out about 3 months in the future, and I write a kind of story, right? And I'm like, I am going to be like this, right? Whatever it is, maybe working less than 100 hours a week, for example, was one recently. And it's sort of visualizing how you'd want your life to be and writing it as maybe 4 or 5 sentences, something like that. The next thing that I do is I say, okay, well, I want to be working, let's say, less than 100 hours a week, but, I have to be working 100 hours a week now. So what do I need to do to work less than 100 hours a week? And I write out them as sort of more like task-driven sentences, like reduce the number of, or actually I think exactly what I wrote is work on more important things related to business and delegate less important things. Mm-hmm. Okay, that's a pretty tactical thing. Mm-hmm. And I'll give that like a 3-letter code. And I'll write 4 or 5 of those and I'll prioritize them, right? And then I'll write a series of tasks for each one that I need to do, right? So each one of those sentences. So there's the vision, there's the sentences, and then for each sentence there's tasks. And the tasks are prioritized by the sentence. And you know what I do?
Well, you showed me once I do, but tell them.
Okay. I file it away.
Oh, yeah.
I never look at it again until about... and what happens is about 2-3 months in the future, sometimes faster than I expect.
Yeah.
I'm like, I'm kind of bored, or like I feel rudderless. What's going on? And I pull up the thing, and they're all done. And I'm like, oh, it happened again. And so it gives me like instant value. Otherwise, you forget. Like this the woman I was telling you about, who's an entrepreneur. She didn't even realize she hit them all.
Yeah.
And was complaining about her. So anyway, that's my method.
Yep. And so part of what we're pointing at here is that the manifestation is a curious mix of allowing and making space and doing something, being proactive in some way. And this is so much how I live now that I can even take an example from an hour ago that is about this podcast. So I wrote you 2 text messages right before I got here. One's the one, and you didn't read them until at the same time. One of them said, I can't come because I've got a meeting in the city at 5 and I'm going to be late otherwise. So I'd made a decision that we couldn't do this podcast, but there's this other thread in my mind that says, I want to be in service. I want the highest and best thing to happen for myself and everyone else. Maybe I'm making the wrong call here. It seems like this meeting at 5 is super important and I shouldn't be late for it. Make the decision, packing my bags, can't do this podcast, and then my meeting messages and says, can we do 6? And that's how I know. Like, when I message you, I'm like, I'll be there, right? So that's how I'm always living. Like, I'm taking my next step. I'm not just lying on the couch eating Cheetos. I'm trying to organize reality as best as I can. And I'm looking for signs and occurrences that actually are being orchestrated at another level of intelligence around me.
I just, the image of you lying on bed eating Cheetos is, it's going to be hard to remove from my mind. But, listen, yeah, you're not one to lie on the bed and eat Cheetos. And I don't think many people are. Yeah. And it might be that you want to manifest that, though. That's okay, too. Manifesting, taking a break, for a lot of people is as important as manifesting success or other things.
Sure.
But it's really interesting. It's allowing the space for the quote unquote magic of the universe to occur. Right? And we've talked about in the past this concept of conversations with reality. And it's a great example of what you said, and that you didn't just say like, oh, I want to do the podcast. You said, I want to be in higher service to humanity, and I think the podcast might be right. And the universe then gave the space for you to do the podcast without compromising any of the things
totally
that you're supposed
That's
to be doing.
Exactly it. And without that perspective, that conversation with reality, people just like plow through reality. right? Especially if you have some resources, right? It's like, oh, I can't get there, with an Uber. Well, like, I'll take a helicopter or whatever, right? You could just force it harder and harder. And you do want to have tenacity as an entrepreneur trying to change the world. But the universe isn't trying to kill you. It's trying to team up with you to help reality, to help the world out. And so team up with it. See what the other options are. It's even to the point now where if I go, and I've mentioned this in other podcasts, if I go to get an Uber or a Lyft or something, and there's like 3x surge pricing or something, I stop and say, what's that about, right? Like, because to me, it's like, the universe unfolds, reality unfolds very elegantly for me usually. And I'll actually say, I'm not taking that 3x ride. Oh, I just remembered a buddy who lives like 3 blocks from here. Like, I'll go see what he's up to. And then like a life-changing conversation happens, right? That's what it looks like in my daily life.
Well, for a lot of entrepreneurs and for a lot of type A personalities, like it's like, I got to get there. I got to do this. I got to have it. And listen, I'm that way too. So I'm not going to say that it's been a difficult transition for me to become more manifester, less type A person.
To leave more space.
Yeah, so I'd say like for a long time I was like totally type A. I'm like, I'm going to a meeting, like I don't care if it's raining, snowing, or like there's a hailstorm, I'm gonna make that meeting. Now I'm like definitely more in the manifesting realm, to the point where I do say, okay, well, it's hailing right now. Maybe there's a reason I shouldn't be going to this meeting. Let me pause and reflect. And I think, it's not just if you have all the resources in the world, it's a common, sometimes if you don't have resources, you feel trapped. Like, I gotta do this, even though the universe may be saying, don't do it.
Right.
And it's a personality thing. It's a type A personality, kind of get things done. Nothing stands in my way. And sometimes like no is the right answer that you need to listen to from the universe for the manifestation of what you want to happen.
And the better answer. Yeah.
Yeah. And I would say, how does it work? I mean, when you look at that, I mean, it's always worked for me. I mean, it just worked right now with a ticket to an event. I was talking with my friend about manifesting it, and literally someone popped in the chat and said, "Oh, I have a ticket." And my friend who wanted the ticket knows that person, and it just was like this magical moment that just happened right in front of me, like right before also. So I think, just creating, because the other thing that could have happened is I could have ignored the chat, right? Because I was kind of talking with my other friend, and I could have ignored it, but this one popped up. I said, okay, what's going on? He's like, oh, I happen to have a ticket. I'm like, oh my God, this other person.
You could have paid $10,000 and somebody would have given up a ticket, right? There's many options. Yeah.
So creating, so it doesn't work like you would expect always, right? And that's where I think it works. I can tell you, I am a very factual, very rationally minded person, and I would say it works.
Yeah. It is. It happens to me so often and so improbabilistically that it's only because I'm a rational person that I believe in it now, because it's just my worldview had to expand to account for what's going on. It's the way reality works now.
For me.
Yeah.
Right. And you.
Yeah.
And the trick though to unlocking it is not just to visualize it, right? But also to be open to an alternative path.
It's a kind of consciousness, really. It's a shift in consciousness that creates the space for it, that creates the alignment with it. It's kind of a cocktail, right? You have to have, there's got to be some intention there. There's got to be some space. If you're full of fear and doubt and those kind of emotions, it screws the whole thing up, right? You can't, when you're full of fear and like that, you can't, there could be a sign in front of you telling you what to do and you might not see it, right?
It's like, literally, it's free if you press this button.
Right,
it's
exactly.
like, nothing's free. It's like, it can't be free. No, it's totally free, my friend.
Right.
So I don't believe you. So no, fear and doubt is a fascinating, I would say that if I look at when I think there are really great manifestors out there that don't see the manifested gift right in front of them because of, I would add another one, hurt or pain,
Yes.
fear, and doubt. Right? So they could, like,
yeah.
the woman who achieved all her dreams was still in pain and couldn't even appreciate that all the things she wanted 3 months ago were fully realized.
Yeah.
And I was like, you should be wildly happy. Everything you just said you wanted 3 months ago, you have.
Yeah, right.
But you're upset. And that's a pain.
Yeah.
Right? But other people are so scared that they sort of like, oh, wouldn't it be great if I got a promotion? And their boss is like, I'd really like to take you to lunch. It's like, oh, no, he's going to fire me. And like,
right, totally. People get triggered and, yeah, absolutely.
And then doubt, it's like, oh, I could never. It's like, I would really like that whatever, but I could never get it.
You'll see this, actually. People will want some kind of big shot meeting with somebody. They'll actually manifest the meeting, and then they'll crap their pants. And the meeting will fall apart because they don't feel they're good enough. They can't handle it now, right? You'll see people's sort of fortitude waver, and reality is always reconfiguring. So.
Right. So, I mean, Matt, unfortunately, and this is actually something we should warn about, because how does it work? Well, it also works both ways, right? So if you're always thinking negative thoughts and always like, oh, man, I'll never get the promotion. I'll never, you're never going to get the promotion. Or it's like, I don't think I can get the deal. That deal's too big. You're not going to get the deal. So
somebody's afraid of getting fired, and they're so afraid that they act all squirrely and get fired.
I mean, it happens all the time. And this is a real danger. You manifest both ways. And in fact, so one of the things that I've realized about manifestation is it's extremely dangerous if you go negative.
It's kind of just like the accelerator pedal, right? Like, it's just reality starts to work faster and more efficiently in whatever direction you're in alignment with.
Yeah, so I actually, one of the cautionary tales here, and the reality is probably most people are manifesting negative things in their life. And then you hear people who really, really go deep on manifestation. People who are afraid of getting sick get sick. People who are, afraid of being poor are poor. And because what's happening is they're putting so much mental energy in the fear of being poor or the fear of being sick that they become poor and sick. So one of the cautionary tales I would tell you is manifestation works. Keep your thoughts positive. Keep your goals positive. And actually, as you get better and better at manifestation, you also, as a cautionary piece of advice, want to be careful about not going dark and negative.
Yes. I mean, our thoughts, our beliefs, our emotions really, really matter. Even if you didn't believe in any of this manifesting stuff, negative belief, thoughts, and emotions decrease your chances of success and increase your chances of illness and all that stuff. But really, and I'm as a computer science guy and all this stuff, I've really thought a lot about what is the mechanism of these forces, right? And I believe
voodoo. Didn't you know?
That probably is a kind of manifesting, and not one you probably want to get involved in. But the thoughts, beliefs, and emotions that we are carrying and generating, I believe, are bringing us into alignment with different attractor fields, which is just like a notion from physics, Right. And so these attractor fields are what is one way to think of it. They're organizing matter and energy around us. Yeah. And so the name of the game becomes to bring yourself into greater and greater alignment with more and more beautiful and powerful attractor fields.
Yeah, I mean, Eckhart Tolle has some interesting descriptors.
Have we gone too
this.
Far? This is
no. It's okay. I mean, we can always check ourselves. But if you want to explain, like, maybe the sort of backdrop of manifestation, like how could it actually work? I mean, everything's energy. That's pretty much a fact now by science standards. The atoms just boil down to particles that are energy, and so our thoughts are energy. that's also an indisputable fact. And so the energy of our thoughts would be logical to assume might affect the energy around us and even the energy in the universe. Yeah. Now, it might affect it very little, but, we're not necessarily manifesting our sun colliding with, Pluto or something. We're talking about manifesting a smile or manifesting a slightly better outcome in a situation. So the vibration or the energy of our thoughts probably is in alignment with the things that we're trying to manifest in the world. So, there is a logical description to it, and it does happen. So people should do it. I can talk, as I said, for me personally, the methodology that I described to you is like 100% effective. Mm-hmm. And, I would tell you that if you go back to the example of the energy, that energy is thought. So there's so many. I'll tell you a funny example of it. I had this crappy computer, and I'm like, this is a crappy computer. But I used it because I just had it in a place where I would frequently use it. And the keyboard wasn't very good, and I didn't like it very much. And I'm like, every time I sat down, I'd be like, this is a crappy computer, but I'd use it. This is a crap. And it finally just broke, and it broke way ahead of schedule. This thing was not supposed, it's a relatively new crappy computer. And it broke, and I put another computer I had there, and I was like, oh my God, I'm so happy. And it was this weird thing, and I'm like, wait a minute, how did this thing break? It broke like God only knows. But its breaking was like one of the best things that happened to me, because now I have a computer I like to use. I'm super happy. And it's like, did I manifest it breaking? And then it was like, why didn't I just say I don't like using this and move it? And this goes into the sort of interplay.
You killed that computer with your negative thoughts about it.
I probably did kill that computer.
So listen to this. I have one just like it. 10 years ago, I had a laptop. It had a spinny hard drive in it, not these solid state drives today. And I was having an argument with my girlfriend at the time, and I had the darkest thought I'd ever had in that relationship. And I opened my laptop to get some work done right after having this dark thought, and I hear this click, click, click. The hard drive had died. Now, spinny hard drives, they will eventually get that click, but most of the time people just stop using the computer before it gets that click, right?
Yeah, it takes a long time.
It is a low chance that the seconds after having this, I felt the negative energy running through my body, and it seems that it killed my computer, And to me, and this gets into the learning aspect of the manifesting, because I think in general, the more you get down this path, you realize that we are here to learn, we're here to enlighten, we're here to elevate, and the quicker you can get the lessons, the less painful life needs to be, right? So when my hard drive died like that, it sucked, and it was kind of something I was grateful for, because it was a little bit of a slap in the face that it was annoying, I lost some information, but it could have been worse, right? And that's my conversation with the universe. So, and you see how that changes your vibration as well, right? You have something happen. I could have kept spiraling. I could have been like, well, now I'm mad at her, and now I'm mad at my computer and the company and the world because my hard drive is dead. Nope, I did an about face. Thanks for the warning. I'm grateful for that. I apologize for that thought. We've got some issues to work on. Turning that vibration around, right, and heading the other direction.
Most people, well, this is actually a very interesting thing.
Yeah.
They get a heart, so... What is negative feedback from the universe in the world of manifesting? Right? Now, this is a very interesting question. I would say from my firsthand experience, it's a stop sign.
Yeah.
Right? But a lot of people take that as like, oh man, and now
further
my soup is spoiled, and my shoe is dirty, and I'm locked out of the office, and it's like, but it's like, buddy, stop
everything. Sit down. Yes.
Stop.
Yeah.
But you just keep going, and then it's like, and now I cut my arm,
totally.
and and everyone's had these things, right?
Yeah.
Where it's like one bad thing, another bad thing, another bad thing, another bad thing. that's manifestation. But it's what's in conversation with the universe. What I found is that it's like a stop, right? And like it's and what you probably, as you said, instead of going darker and darker and darker, and then the next bad thing happens and the next bad thing happens, what you really need to do, and this was a big hard lesson for me that I've learned recently, is just literally be like, zen it out, center, and say, okay, I'm going to try a different approach here. A positive approach, a light-minded approach. I'm going to forgive whatever happened here, because this isn't...
Being open to learning whatever it is you're not seeing, getting honest with yourself. And sometimes that's all that's really being asked of us, to get honest with ourselves, right? And I do this thing that I call speaking truth sometimes to get me out of it, where I just start saying the nearest true thing that I can say. And I don't mean a grand ultimate truth. I mean a truth like, I really hate this project that I'm working on, or this is driving me nuts, or I don't like working with so-and-so, right? Like saying there's a bunch of true things that tend to have piled up inside of us that we haven't gotten honest with and gotten out in the open.
Well, like, the other day I was checking into a hotel with a friend of mine, and like, it was a total mess, and I got upset.
Yeah.
And, I literally didn't want to get too, I'm in control. So I was like, look, this is a disaster. I'm going to walk outside. I'm going to get some air. And when I come back, I hope it's fixed. And of course it wasn't. But, and then I'm like, well, why am I, like, I check into hotels, it's a mess all the time. Like, what was happening here? And it was that I was just with people, and I wanted it to be perfect, and it wasn't perfect, and I felt like it reflected badly on me, and I was all like, and so when you dig into a lot of stuff, and so I thought it was like when you're in the heat of the moment, and you got someone who's making total mistakes, and it's just a mess. Literally, I was like, okay, I'm gonna leave that. Like, I can be here. It's just like grating on my nerves. Or I can walk outside.
Gave yourself a timeout. Big boy.
Yeah. Give myself a timeout. Come back in when it's all fine. So, it's okay if things are not manifesting the way that you want, or you're in a downward spiral, to just give yourself a timeout.
And here's where this is such like straight up Jedi judo stuff to master here, because what we're not saying is everything needs to go perfectly all the time. It really is more this conversation with the universe thing, where you're heading toward your goals, which are hopefully an increasingly high vibration intention. You're learning as you go. Because the other trap, and I've fallen into this when I've been in a super flow state for days and days, like the doors are opening in front of me, literally and figuratively. It's just like, and then something goes a little bit not to one of my preferences. And then that annoys me. And then I start noticing all the other things that are according to my preferences. You will drive yourself insane as you form preferences, right? Like each preference you form about how the world ought to be is now an opening for somebody to annoy you, or for something. You've now put your center outside of yourself and on circumstances, which is what all the spiritual teachings say not to do, right? Ultimately, we're moving toward a place where your joy and your happiness are independent of the circumstances. Doesn't mean your head is in the sand or you're not paying attention, but your joy is now independent of the circumstances. And so sometimes in the earlier days, or as you're getting like super manifesting, like cruise mode, there's this stumble where you start thinking that reality is here just to gratify your every preference. And now it's got to teach you again. And so sometimes it'll just start screwing things up just to remind you that's not the game.
The last time you came down here, I got in 11 hours late because I was in an airline accident.
Yes.
And it was special because it was exactly what you said. I was in this beautiful flow state. I was in business class. I had started out in coach. And I'm like in business class. I'm like, this is great. Brand new plane. I'm like loving it, watching a movie. And then we're stuck at the gate. We get out. We go back to the gate. We get out. The plane gets in an accident on the tarmac. It crashes into another plane. They have the fire trucks all around. They tow us back to the gate. And then it was like 6 or 7 hours. I had to go through customs, go back through customs. I mean, And you know, and I remember I'm like, it took a lot not to get aggravated, but it was all just at the end of the day.
Because you could say, you could get so pissed off, right? You're in business class. Now you get off the plane and go back into the terminal,
well,
right?
you know, the old me might not have handled it so gracefully.
Or you can be grateful that how many people get to say they've been in an airplane accident and it was that minor, right?
Yeah.
Significant and minor. An airplane hit another airplane on the ground, thankfully, right? You're just kind of like, whoa. So it's a mix of like shock and gratitude, right? If you're lucky, right?
It was, but you know what it was because to your point, it could have spiraled, and the old me would have been in the front of the line. I was the first one off the plane, literally. Yeah. And I went up to the desk to get on the next flight. And the old me would have been like, I'm in business class. I need to get on the next flight. But actually what I did was I must have waited for like 30 minutes. And the poor guy was just like freaked out.
And you're empathizing with them, right?
Yeah,
you could remember a self who wouldn't
him
have.
from a group of angry passengers with
That's
pitchforks.
Beautiful, right.
And it ended up teaching me to be a new me in these tough spots that are external triggers to myself.
The old you might not have had any sympathy for the guy behind the counter.
None.
His head's going to roll and you're going to get a lot of miles out of this or whatever, right? You could be in a totally different state. And what we're saying as two guys who've been around for a while is we're learning our lessons. We're getting better at this. We're increasingly getting our needs met while helping the people around us. And things are increasingly happening in a more beautiful way.
Yeah, and you know, the funny thing was, the biggest concern I had was, well, you were coming over to my house, and the second one, or really the first one, was that I was going to be with my kids, and I missed them a lot. And the beautiful thing was, I texted my former wife, and she was like, sure, I got them, no problem. Pick them up in the morning.
Wow, yeah.
Be safe.
Yeah.
And, you know, I'm not going to say that our relating is always beautiful, but that was a beautiful
nice,
moment. Yeah. And, you know, I was like, wow. And then, I was up early. I got to do some chores around the house before the kids. So it ended up working out really great. And I just did.
We had a nice morning, actually.
Yeah.
I slept on your couch. It was great.
Yeah. So, you know, I just creating that space. So back to sort of a practical thing. So now I'm an entrepreneur. I'm like, I'm going to start manifesting, but they've got to integrate it into their day-to-day life, and it almost seems antithetical. And we talked a little bit about how you create space and stuff like that, but someone might say, well, you know, I still got to make payroll, Josh, and you know, and what about
you probably got to make payroll. It's a good guess. Do your damnedest to meet payroll. Could also be the case that you should have shut down that company a long time ago and it's not doing anything good for the world. I don't know. So you're staying open, right? You're doing your best. Like I had somebody, tell me
I've had
my friend so-and-so got laid off, and they were just like weeping for this person, and they're like, they were trying to get me into it, right? You'll see this, people do this. They want you to get your emotions all tied up like theirs are in a thing, and it's just like, I bet that's hard for them, but could be the best thing that ever happened. You read these great biographies, Steve Jobs or whatever, he says the greatest thing that happened was getting fired from Apple, right? We're not saying it's easy. We're not saying it's nice. We're not saying it isn't painful. We're just saying be careful about making these assumptions about that exactly what's best and what isn't.
Yeah, so, I have these conversations with people all the time, and, it's a funny thing with manifestation, because as we were saying earlier, there's the good and the bad. Mm-hmm. And when I see a lot of entrepreneurs that are getting mixed signals from the business, mm-hmm. and I just look at them, they have mixed emotions about running the business.
Totally.
And it's like, it doesn't surprise me then that they have mixed signals, because they're like, well, this is telling me I should give up, but this is telling me that I should stay.
And we call that getting out of alignment with your own
right.
business.
But then I'm like, but you kind of don't really want there's things about the business you don't like and you don't want to be doing, and there are things about the business that you do like and you do want to be doing. And so it doesn't surprise me that you're getting mixed signals from the business itself, because that might be a direct manifestation. So maybe, one of the, back to your point, is like, listen to the tea leaves from the universe, mm-hmm. for sure. Mm-hmm. Continue to take action. But if you're finding yourself seeing mixed signals, those signals might be coming from within.
Yes.
Just as much as they're coming from without.
You're conflicted within, and this is the barometer of that. Yeah.
So the alignment thing is probably the best piece of advice.
Yeah.
Like, find the alignment within yourself about what you really want, possibly using that exercise of telling the story. So, like, I'll go back to a very specific example. There was a period of time about a year ago today where I was working somewhere between 100 and 120 hours a week on the Founder Institute. And I did that for over 6 months, from June to maybe March timeframe. And at some point in March, I was like, I didn't mind it, but it was, there's not a lot of, I was sleeping 3-4 hours a night. I was spending time with my kids, and any of the remaining time between, that was left. And I said, okay, I need to manifest something different. And now, what is it, March to August. So it's about 5-6 months later. And exactly the things I wanted in March are the reality today, even sitting here with you talking on this podcast.
Right. Great. Well, I think this is probably getting close to the end of this episode. It feels really good.
Beautiful topic.
Yes. And so, in summary, find those misalignments within ourselves, learn about ourselves, stay open, have tea with the universe, read the tea leaves. And also, something I always like to suggest to entrepreneurs, see if you can raise the vibration of your endeavor. So there's what you're doing today, there's what the company is doing. How can what that company is doing be just a little more beautiful, a little better for the planet, a little better for the people you've got working there? And I find that raising the vibration of that intention of that endeavor tends to bring in a lot of additional support.
Can't agree more.
Awesome.
Thanks, everyone, for tuning in.
Bye-bye.
Thanks for listening to the Founder Insight podcast. For more episodes, visit fi.co/podcast. Thanks.